The truck stop sits alone on a long stretch of desolate highway, a tiny island of life surrounded by miles of nothing. Dust swirls in the warm breeze as 18-wheelers rumble into the lot, their massive tires crunching against the gravel. A faded neon sign flickers above the diner, barely clinging to life. Inside, the air is thick with the comforting aroma of fresh coffee, sizzling bacon, and fried potatoes. The low hum of conversation mingles with the distant sound of a country song playing on the old jukebox in the corner. Truckers sit hunched over their meals, weary from the road, while travelers sip their coffee, stretching their legs before continuing their long journeys. The atmosphere is peaceful, routine, even. Just another stop along the endless stretch of highway. But that peace is about to be shattered. Sitting alone at the counter, Jack Coleman lifts his coffee mug, his fingers wrapped around the warm ceramic. He's a man of few words, preferring the quiet solitude of the road over unnecessary chatter. His face, lined with experience, tells a story, one of battles fought, both on the battlefield and within. Jack is a retired Navy SEAL, though he rarely speaks of it. He's seen things most men couldn't imagine, done things they couldn't comprehend. But those days are behind him now. The open road is his escape, a way to leave behind the ghosts of his past. He wears a plain flannel shirt, worn jeans, and a trucker's cap pulled low over his sharp eyes. Despite his unassuming appearance, there's something about him, an air of quiet authority, a presence that commands respect without a single word. But not everyone recognizes that kind of power. And soon, someone will make the mistake of underestimating him. Sitting alone at the counter, lifts his coffee mug, fingers wrapped around the warm ceramic. He takes a moment to appreciate the simple pleasure of the steaming brew, letting the aroma wash over him. In a world filled with noise and chaos, Jack finds solace in these quiet moments. He's a man of few words, preferring the serenity of the open road over unnecessary chatter. The gentle clinking of silverware and soft murmurs of other patrons are mere background music to his thoughts. His face, lined with experience, tells a story, one of battles fought, both on the battlefield and within. Each wrinkle and scar is a testament to a life lived on the edge, marked by sacrifice and strength. Jack is a retired Navy SEAL, a title he rarely speaks of. He wears his past like a heavy coat, one he has chosen to set aside. He's seen things most men couldn't imagine, horrors and heroics that haunt the corners of his mind. But those days are behind him now. The open road is his escape, a way to leave behind the ghosts of his past and the weight of memories that linger like shadows. Jack wears a plain flannel shirt, the fabric soft and worn from years of travel. His jeans are equally unremarkable but well-fitted, offering comfort for long hours behind the wheel. A trucker's cap is pulled low over his sharp eyes, which scan the diner with quiet vigilance. Despite his unassuming appearance, there's something about him, an air of quiet authority, a presence that commands respect without a single word. It's in the way he carries himself, the set of his jaw, and the steady rhythm of his breathing. Yet, not everyone recognizes that kind of power. The world is often quick to judge based on appearances, and Jack has learned that lesson all too well. His calm demeanor might lead some to believe he's just another aging trucker, a relic of a bygone era. But deep down, he knows that the steel beneath his surface runs deeper than most can fathom. Today, the diner is filled with travelers, families on road trips, weary truckers seeking a moment's rest, and locals stopping for a bite to eat. Jack sits apart, an island of solitude in a sea of chatter and laughter. He takes a sip of his coffee, savoring the warmth as it spreads through him, grounding him in the moment. Each sip is a reminder of the journey he's chosen, a life of freedom marked by long stretches of highway and endless skies. But soon, the calm will be disrupted. An undercurrent of tension simmers just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to explode. Jack feels it before he sees it, a shift in the atmosphere as the door swings open and the bright sunlight pours in, casting long shadows across the floor. He doesn't need to turn around. He can sense the energy change in the room. In stroll two loud, unruly bikers, their presence like a storm brewing on the horizon. They strut into the diner with an air of arrogance, revving their engines as they park outside. Jack can hear their raucous laughter and crude jokes, a stark contrast to the warm ambience that had enveloped him just moments ago. He can't help but observe their every move, his instincts honed from years of training alerting him to the danger they represent. As they swagger toward the counter, Jack's heart rate remains steady. He knows the type well, men who thrive on intimidation, who see the world as a playground for their chaos. He takes another sip of coffee, deciding to remain an observer for now. But deep down, he knows that someone will make the mistake of underestimating him, and the consequences could be dire. With a slight tilt of his head, he glances up, his sharp eyes locking onto the bikers as they invade his space. The moment of quiet he has clung to is slipping away, and a familiar tension begins to brew. And as the first taunt flies across the counter, he prepares himself for what is about to unfold. The distant roar of motorcycle engines pierces the calm. It grows louder, cutting through the steady hum of the truck stop until two bikes roll into the lot, their riders making a deliberate display of dominance. Axel and Ripper, two notorious members of an outlaw biker gang, come to a halt, their engines growling like untamed beasts. The men dismount, removing their helmets with smug grins plastered across their faces. Axel, the leader, is lean and wiry, his leather jacket adorned with gang patches. His short, dark hair is slicked back, and his sharp, beady eyes constantly scan for trouble. He thrives on control, on making people squirm under his gaze. Ripper, in contrast, is a hulking brute of a man, his thick arms covered in tattoos of skulls and snakes. He cracks his knuckles as he steps forward, grinning at the thought of stirring up some chaos. They don't just walk, they swagger, owning whatever space they step into. And today, they've set their sights on this truck stop. The door swings open as Axel and Ripper enter, their presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. Conversations falter, and a few wary glances are exchanged. Everyone knows their type. Men who thrive on intimidation, who push limits just because they can. They don't sit down right away. Instead, they linger, surveying the room like wolves looking for weak prey. Axel nudges Ripper, motioning toward a table where two truckers sit, minding their own business. The bikers saunter over, leaning in just a little too close. "Long road, huh, boys?" Axel smirks, his tone laced with mockery. "Bet it gets awful lonely." One trucker stiffens but keeps his head down. The other shifts uncomfortably in his seat. They know better than to engage. Satisfied, Axel chuckles and moves toward the counter. That's when his gaze lands on Jack, who sits unmoved, sipping his coffee like nothing has changed. Ripper follows Axel's line of sight, his grin widening. "What do we have here?" Old-timer enjoying his coffee. Jack doesn't react. He doesn't look up. He doesn't engage. And that, more than anything, irritates Axel. Axel and Ripper slide onto stools near Jack, close enough to invade his space. But Jack remains as still as a mountain, eyes focused ahead, as if they don't even exist. Then, their attention shifts. A young waitress, Jenny, approaches with a pot of coffee, her expression polite but wary. "More coffee?" she asks Jack. Before he can answer, Axel leans in, flashing a predatory grin. "How about you fill my cup first, sweetheart?" Jenny hesitates. There's something in his tone that makes her uneasy. She quickly pours his coffee, trying not to make eye contact. Axel watches her, enjoying her discomfort. "What's your name, darling?" She forces a polite smile. "Jenny." "Well, Jenny, I think you should take a little break. Sit down, have a chat with us." Jenny glances toward the other customers, but no one dares intervene. She swallows hard, shaking her head. "I have work to do." Axel's smile fades, replaced by something darker. "I wasn't a skin, sweetheart." That's when Jack speaks. Jenny hesitates, her hand trembling slightly as she pours Axel's coffee. There's something in his tone that sends a chill down her spine, a predatory edge that makes her uneasy. She quickly pours his coffee, trying to keep her eyes on the task at hand and not make eye contact, hoping to fade into the background. Axel watches her closely, reveling in her discomfort. "What's your name, darling?" he drawls, leaning back in his seat with an arrogant smirk plastered across his face. She forces a polite smile, though it doesn't quite reach her eyes. "Jenny," she replies, her voice steady but lacking warmth. "Well, Jenny," Axel continues, his tone dripping with false charm, "I think you should take a little break. Sit down, have a chat with us." He gestures to the empty seat next to him as if inviting her to join a fun party rather than a potentially dangerous encounter. Jenny glances toward the other customers, a silent plea for support in her eyes, but no one dares intervene. They all seem to be holding their breath, caught in the tension of the moment, not wanting to attract the biker's ire. She swallows hard, shaking her head, her instincts screaming at her to keep her distance. "I have work to do," she manages to say, her voice trembling slightly. Axel's smile fades, replaced by something darker and more menacing. The shift in his demeanor is palpable. The atmosphere thickens as he leans forward, invading her personal space. "I wasn't a skin, sweetheart," he snaps, his voice low and threatening. The tension in the diner becomes electric, and for a brief moment, time seems to freeze. Other patrons shift uncomfortably in their seats, their eyes darting between Jenny and the bikers, unsure of what to do. They can feel the danger lurking just beneath the surface, a powder keg waiting for a spark to ignite. That's when Jack speaks. His voice cuts through the air, calm yet commanding. "Leave her alone." All eyes turn to Jack, who sits at the counter, his expression unchanging as he faces Axel. The contrast between Jack's composed demeanor and Axel's volatile energy is striking. Jack's mere presence seems to draw the attention of everyone in the diner, a quiet authority radiating from him. Axel's gaze snaps to Jack, surprise flickering in his eyes before turning to annoyance. "And who the hell are you?" he retorts, attempting to regain control of the situation. "I'm someone who doesn't take kindly to bullies," Jack replies, his tone steady and firm. He takes a slow sip of his coffee, his eyes locked on Axel, unfazed by the tension brewing in the room. Jenny feels a mix of relief and anxiety wash over her as she watches the exchange. For a moment, it seems as if the world has narrowed down to just the three of them. The bikers, with their rough demeanor, and Jack, the quiet warrior, now locked in a battle of wills. Axel scoffs, dismissing Jack's warning. What's a washed-up old vet gonna do about it? He looks back at Jenny, a predatory glint in his eye. "You should really listen to your friend here, darling. It could save you a lot of trouble." Jack's jaw tightens at the implication, a flicker of anger crossing his features. "I said, leave her alone." The words come out like a rumble of thunder, filled with the weight of his military background and the lessons learned from years of experience. In that moment, the other diners hold their breath, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Jenny can feel the shift in the atmosphere, the palpable fear and anticipation hanging heavy in the air. She silently prays for a resolution, her heart racing as the confrontation escalates. Axel's bravado begins to wane, realizing he's up against someone who isn't easily intimidated. He smirks again, though this time it lacks conviction. "You're making a mistake, old man," he sneers, trying to mask his uncertainty with bravado. Jack leans forward, the challenge unmistakable in his stance. "You don't want to find out just how big that mistake can be." The calm in his voice contrasts sharply with the intensity of his gaze, a warning that doesn't need to be spoken twice. For a fleeting moment, the diner is a still life painting, everyone caught between the impending storm and the hope that it might pass without further incident. But Jack knows that the longer this standoff continues, the closer they get to a breaking point, and he prepares himself for whatever comes next. "Let her go." His voice is calm, even. But there's a weight behind those three words, a weight that makes Axel turn his head slowly. Ripper raises an eyebrow, glancing between Jack and Axel. The other customers go still, their eyes darting between the two men. Axel scoffs, leaning back. "Oh, we got ourselves a hero, huh?" Jack doesn't respond. He simply holds Axel's gaze, unwavering. The air is thick with tension, the kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Axel sizes Jack up, smirking at the older man's apparent lack of fear. And then, just loud enough for the whole diner to hear, he says, "You have no idea who you're messing with." Jack takes another sip of coffee, sets the mug down. Then, with the same measured calm, he replies, "Neither do you." Axel leans forward, his smirk widening as he taps his fingers against the counter. He doesn't like being challenged, especially not by someone he sees as a washed-up old man. "You got some nerve, old-timer," Axel sneers, swirling his coffee before taking a sip. "Think you're some kind of cowboy?" Jack remains still, his fingers resting lightly on the rim of his mug. He doesn't flinch, doesn't bite back. He just watches. Ripper lets out a low chuckle, nudging Axel. "Maybe he's deaf. You are getting up there in age. Huh, Pops?" Axel grins, catching on to the game. He pushes further. "Yeah, what's it like being a washed-up has-been, huh? Riding around in that ugly rig of yours? Probably spend your nights crying into a bottle, remembering the good old days." Jack exhales slowly, shaking his head. Axel narrows his eyes. Oh, that bother you? He leans in closer. Come on, old man, say something. Jack finally looks up, meeting Axel's gaze with unsettling calm. His voice is quiet, deliberate. Walk away. The words aren't a plea. They aren't a request. They're a warning. And that only makes Axel laugh harder. Axel turns to Ripper, shaking his head. Oh man. He thinks he's a tough guy. Ripper smirks. Seen a lot of those before. They all talk big, right up until they're on the ground begging for mercy. Axel rolls his shoulders, clearly enjoying himself. Yeah. You ever been in a real fight, trucker? 'Cause we've put plenty of tough guys on their backs. Jack doesn't respond. He simply takes another sip of coffee, his expression unreadable. The other diners shift uncomfortably. They've seen these bikers in action before, and they know how this usually plays out. Axel and Ripper pick a target, push until they get a rise, then beat the poor guy senseless just for fun. But something feels different this time. Jack isn't reacting the way most men would, and that's making people nervous. Jenny watches the exchange from behind the counter, fidgeting with the coffee pot. She notices something the bikers don't: Jack's unwavering composure. Most people get flustered when Axel and Ripper start throwing insults. They shrink back, make excuses, or try to talk their way out of it. But Jack, he's like stone, unshaken. Jenny leans toward an older trucker sitting at the end of the counter. Hey Roy, she whispers. Who is that guy? Roy, a seasoned trucker with graying hair and sun-worn skin, follows her gaze. His expression darkens. That's Jack Coleman, Roy mutters, taking a slow sip of his coffee. Jenny frowns. Okay. And? Roy glances around, making sure no one else is listening. Then, he leans in. He's not just some trucker. That man is a legend. Jenny's breath catches. Legend. Roy nods. Word is, he used to be a SEAL. Not just any SEAL, either. One of the best. The kind of guy they send in when no one else can get the job done. Jenny stares at Jack, suddenly seeing him in a different light. If that's true, then Axel and Ripper have no idea what they're walking into. Jack finishes his coffee and sets the mug down with quiet finality. Without a word, he stands, tossing a few bills onto the counter. Axel watches him with a smirk. Where you going, old man? We ain't done here. Jack doesn't answer. He just grabs his cap, adjusts it, and walks toward the exit. Axel and Ripper exchange glances before following. The diner goes silent as the door swings shut behind them. Outside, Jack moves toward his truck, his boots crunching against the gravel. The sun is starting to set, casting long shadows across the lot. Axel and Ripper step in front of him, blocking his path. You know, Axel muses, crossing his arms. It's rude to walk away from a conversation. Jack doesn't respond. He just keeps walking. Ripper steps closer, cracking his knuckles. We was thinking, maybe we take that rig of yours for a little joyride. Axel grins. Yeah. You know, since you're just a washed-up old man, maybe it's time you handed over the keys. Jack stops. Slowly, he turns to face them. His expression remains unreadable, but his posture shifts, subtly, almost imperceptibly. But to a trained eye, it's a telltale sign. A man preparing for battle. Jack exhales, rolling his shoulders as he takes a measured step forward. His eyes lock onto Axel's, his gaze unwavering. Last chance to walk away. Axel and Ripper burst into laughter. Oh man, Axel wheezes, wiping a tear from his eye. You're killing me, old man. Ripper shakes his head. Look at him trying to act tough. Jack doesn't flinch, doesn't move, just waits. And that, more than anything, should have been their first warning. But they don't see it. They mistake his calm for fear. And that mistake is about to cost them dearly. Axel's smirk tightens as he sizes up Jack. He's had enough of the old man's quiet defiance. Enough of the way he just stands there, unshaken. And he's about to put an end to it. Without warning, Axel swings, fast and wild, aiming straight for Jack's jaw. But Jack isn't there. With a sharp pivot, Jack shifts his weight, sidestepping the punch with effortless precision. Axel's fist cuts through empty air, and before he can recover, one fluid motion. A calculated strike. Jack's open palm meets Axel's chest with the force of a battering ram. The impact sends Axel stumbling backward, his boots skidding against the gravel. He gasps, trying to catch the breath Jack just knocked out of him. His eyes widen in disbelief. That wasn't just luck. That was Ripper sees his leader falter and reacts on instinct. He's bigger, stronger. This old man can't possibly. With a furious roar, Ripper lunges, fists raised. He swings hard, expecting sheer power to be enough. But Jack is already moving. With surgical precision, Jack ducks under Ripper's attack, his movements almost effortless. As Ripper's momentum carries him forward, Jack shifts, redirecting the brute's weight. A sharp twist. A well-placed strike to the back of the knee. And suddenly, his massive frame crashes onto the pavement, sending up a small cloud of dust. He groans, clutching his knee in shock. Axel scrambles back to his feet, rage flashing in his eyes. What the hell? But Jack is already turning toward him. Axel tries to rush in again, this time more cautious. He feints left, then right, trying to outmaneuver Jack. It doesn't work. Jack sees the attack before it happens. Axel's punch comes in, Jack parries, twisting his arm just enough to send Axel off balance. Ripper, still struggling to stand, reaches for Jack's back. Jack steps aside, grabbing Ripper's wrist and twisting it just enough to send a sharp jolt of pain through the biker's arm. Ripper before Jack sweeps his legs out from under him, again. Axel throws another wild punch, but Jack catches his wrist mid-air. A single, precise movement sends Axel spinning onto the ground beside his friend. It's over before they even realize what happened. Jack doesn't throw unnecessary punches. He doesn't waste energy. Every movement is calculated, efficient. A cold display of, and that's when the bikers realize. They messed with the truck stop goes. Every patron, every trucker, every worker stands frozen, eyes locked on the scene before them. Jack doesn't look winded. Doesn't even look angry. He simply stands, adjusting his jacket as if he just finished taking out the trash. The air is thick with tension. Then, the low breaks the silence. More bikers. Axel's gang. Half a dozen of them pull up to the lot, their engines growling as they take in the sight before them. One of the newcomers, a grizzled man with a snake tattoo coiling up his arm, steps forward. His eyes flick between Axel, Ripper, and Jack. Jack meets his gaze, calm and steady. A slow smirk creeps onto the biker's face. Well. The other bikers shift, waiting for a cue. But Snake Tattoo just chuckles, shaking his head. He turns to Axel, still gasping for breath. You really picked the wrong fight, huh? Axel doesn't respond. Jack takes a step forward, his voice low and measured. You want some too? The way he says it sends a chill through the gathered bikers. Snake Tattoo lifts his hands in surrender. Not me, man. I know when to fold. He turns to his crew. Mount up. Axel stumbles to his feet, his face red with humiliation. Ripper groans, still trying to catch his breath. The gang revs their engines, ready to leave. Axel clenches his fists, fury burning in his eyes. He wants revenge. Wants to Jack. But deep down, he knows the truth. Jack ended them. But he didn't. And that's worse than losing. Without another word, Axel spits on the ground, then swings a leg over his bike. The gang roars off into the night, disappearing down the highway. Jack watches them go, then exhales slowly. Just another day. The hum of the truck stop slowly returns as the dust settles. The distant roar of the bikers' engines fades into the night, leaving behind only the stunned silence of those who witnessed what just happened. Jenny, the young waitress, hesitates at the diner's entrance, her eyes still wide. She looks at Jack, the man who just stood up for her, who dismantled two dangerous bikers like it was just another routine part of his day. With tentative steps, she approaches him, wringing her hands together. Hey, she starts, her voice soft but sincere. I just wanted to say thank you for what you did back there. Jack doesn't make a big deal out of it. He doesn't puff out his chest or revel in the moment. He simply nods, offering her the smallest of smiles. "Wasn't right what they were doing," he says, his voice calm and even. "That's all." Jenny exhales, as if she'd been holding in a breath this whole time. "Well, I'm glad you were here," she admits. "They scare a lot of people." Jack says nothing, just takes another sip of his coffee. For him, there's nothing special about what he did, it was just the right thing. As Jenny heads back inside, the truckers in the diner start murmuring among themselves. Some of them have seen their fair share of fights. Others have heard rumors of men like Jack. One trucker, a burly guy with a salt and pepper beard, claps Jack on the back as he walks by. "Guess those boys learned a hard lesson today," he says with a chuckle. Another shakes his head, still in disbelief. "I've seen those two rough up plenty of folks. Never thought I'd see 'em put down that quick." Jack doesn't make a big deal out of it. He doesn't puff out his chest or revel in the moment. He simply nods, offering her the smallest of smiles. "Wasn't right what they were doing," he says, his voice calm and even. "That's all." Jenny exhales, as if she'd been holding in a breath this whole time. The tension that had gripped the diner feels like it's slowly dissipating, replaced by a sense of relief. "Well, I'm glad you were here," she admits, her voice tinged with gratitude. "They scare a lot of people." Jack takes another sip of his coffee, his eyes focused on the cup, lost in thought. For him, there's nothing special about what he did, it was just the right thing. A code ingrained in him from years of service, a silent promise to protect those who can't protect themselves. As Jenny heads back inside, the truckers in the diner start murmuring among themselves, their conversations a low hum in the background. Some of them have seen their fair share of fights, the rough and tumble of life on the road, while others have heard rumors of men like Jack, legends whispered about in the dark corners of bars. One trucker, a burly guy with a salt and pepper beard, claps Jack on the back as he walks by, his hearty laugh echoing off the diner walls. "Guess those boys learned a hard lesson today," he says, a twinkle of admiration in his eyes. Jack nods in acknowledgement, his expression remaining modest. Another trucker shakes his head, still in disbelief. "I've seen those two rough up plenty of folks. Never thought I'd see 'em put down that quick." He gestures animatedly, recounting the scene with wide eyes, and soon the others lean in, eager to hear the details of the confrontation. Jack can't help but listen as the stories swirl around him, a mixture of admiration and disbelief. The camaraderie among the truckers is palpable. They share a bond forged through countless miles on the road and the dangers that come with it. Yet Jack feels slightly out of place in this celebration of violence, a quiet man amid boisterous laughter. As the chatter grows louder, Jack's thoughts drift back to the confrontation. He recalls the moment Axel had lunged at him, the rush of adrenaline and the instinct to defend not just himself, but the others around him. Each calculated movement had felt like second nature, a reflex born from years of training and experience. But now, as the adrenaline fades, he's left with a lingering unease. What had driven Axel and Ripper to behave that way? The thought nags at him. Were they simply looking for trouble, or was it something deeper, a reflection of their own insecurities? Jack knows that violence often masks vulnerability, and he can't help but wonder about the men behind the bikes. The burly trucker continues his animated recounting of the fight, gesturing wildly as he talks about how quickly Jack had subdued both bikers. "And did you see how he moved? Like a damn cat," he exclaims, laughter bubbling up among the crowd. Jack feels the heat rise to his cheeks, a flush of embarrassment creeping in. "Hey, it wasn't like that," Jack interjects, shaking his head. "I just did what anyone would do." But the truckers aren't buying it. They see the valor in his actions, the strength in standing up to those who would bully others. "Modesty doesn't suit you, Jack," another trucker chimes in, a grin splitting his face. "You took on two of the roughest bikers in the state and walked away without a scratch. That's something to be proud of." Jack shrugs, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips, but he knows that pride is a dangerous path. The weight of his past lingers, reminding him of the battles fought, not just the physical ones, but the emotional scars that linger long after the dust has settled. As the laughter and storytelling continue, Jack feels a sense of camaraderie that he hasn't experienced in a long time. For a moment, he's reminded of his time in the service, the bond forged between brothers in arms. Yet he can't shake the feeling that he's still an outsider, a lone wolf navigating a world that moves on without him. Eventually, the truckers begin to disperse, heading back to their booths and conversations, the excitement of the night beginning to fade. Jack finishes his coffee, the warm ceramic mug feeling like a comfort in his hands. He glances around the diner, taking in the scene, the laughter, the chatter, the shared stories of life on the road. With a quiet resolve, he knows it's time to move on. He pays his tab, leaving a generous tip for Jenny, who had shown him kindness amidst the chaos. As he stands to leave, he catches her eye across the room. She smiles at him, a genuine warmth that lingers, and he nods in return. The road calls to him, a siren song promising adventure and solace. With one last look at the bustling diner, he heads out to his truck, the familiar weight of the steering wheel beneath his hands offering a sense of peace. Jack climbs into the cab, takes a deep breath, and starts the engine, the rumble resonating through him like a heartbeat. As he pulls out of the truck stop and onto the open road, he can't help but feel a flicker of hope. Tonight had been unexpected, a reminder that sometimes, standing up for what's right could create ripples far beyond the immediate moment. With the highway stretching out before him, Jack drives off into the night, ready to embrace whatever lies ahead, a quiet warrior in search of his next journey. Jack simply nods again, not looking for praise. A few of the older truckers exchange knowing glances. They've been around long enough to recognize what Jack is. A man who could end a fight before it ever really started. Jack doesn't linger. He finishes the last sip of his coffee, pulls a few bills from his pocket, and places them on the counter. Then, without a word, he turns and strides toward the parking lot, where his rig waits under the glow of the truck stop lights. The gravel crunches beneath his boots as he moves with the same quiet confidence he had when he walked in. Some of the truckers watch him go, exchanging quiet murmurs of respect. Jack climbs into his cab, settles into the driver's seat, and grips the wheel. The open road stretches ahead. He shifts gears, the deep rumble of his engine breaking the quiet. With one last glance in the rearview mirror, Jack pulls out of the lot and disappears into the night. No fanfare. No need for recognition. Just another mile. Another town. Another road. A few miles down the highway, Axel and Ripper pull off onto the side of the road. Their bikes idle beneath the dim glow of a flickering streetlight. Axel sits hunched over, elbows on his knees, nursing his bruised ribs. His knuckles are scuffed, his pride even more battered. Ripper leans against his bike, still catching his breath. Every muscle in his body aches. For the first time in a long time, neither of them speaks. Because what could they say? They were untouchable. They'd spent years intimidating people, throwing their weight around, making others feel small. But tonight, they weren't the predators. They were the prey. And the worst part, that could have hurt them. But he didn't. A few miles down the highway, Axel and Ripper pull off onto the side of the road, their bikes idling beneath the dim glow of a flickering streetlight. The cool night air wraps around them, but it does little to ease the tension that hangs heavily in the atmosphere. The distant hum of the highway is a stark contrast to the silence that envelopes the two bikers, a silence that feels foreign after the chaos of the diner. Axel sits hunched over, elbows resting on his knees, nursing his bruised ribs. Each inhale sends a sharp jab of pain through his side, a harsh reminder of the unexpected confrontation. His knuckles are scuffed and swollen, the remnants of his bravado now fading into a dull throb. But it's not just the physical pain that gnaws at him, it's the injury to his pride, more battered than his body. Ripper leans against his bike, still catching his breath, the adrenaline that had coursed through him now replaced by an ache in every muscle. He glances sideways at Axel, his expression mirroring the confusion and frustration brewing in his mind. For the first time in a long time, neither of them speaks. They sit in uncomfortable silence, grappling with the reality of their defeat. Because what could they say? What words could encapsulate the shame of being bested by an older man who, on the surface, seemed so ordinary? They were untouchable, or so they had thought. They'd spent years intimidating people, throwing their weight around, making others feel small. They had basked in the power that came with being part of a notorious outlaw biker gang, reveling in the fear they instilled in others. But tonight, they weren't the predators. They were the prey. Axel clenches his jaw, the taste of anger bitter on his tongue. He remembers Jack's calm demeanor, the way he had stood up to them without flinching. The memory of that older man's steady gaze sends a wave of humiliation washing over him. He had expected fear, maybe even submission, But what he had encountered was the unexpected strength of someone who refused to back down. Ripper shifts uncomfortably, his mind racing as he processes the events of the night. "What the hell just happened back there?" he finally mutters, breaking the heavy silence. His voice lacks the usual bravado, tinged with disbelief. Axel scoffs, but there's no heat behind it. "We got blindsided by some washed-up vet," he grumbles, attempting to reclaim a sense of control. But deep down, he knows the truth. Jack Coleman was far from washed up. The man had fought with a precision and grace that spoke of years of training and discipline, something they had clearly underestimated. Ripper shakes his head, frustration simmering just beneath the surface. "We've been in fights before, Axel. This wasn't just some bar brawl." "That guy was," he trails off, struggling to articulate the respect he begrudgingly feels for Jack. "He could have hurt us. Really hurt us." Axel winces, memories of Jack's fluid movements flashing through his mind. "Yeah, well, he didn't," he snaps, trying to push the thoughts away. But the weight of that unfulfilled potential lingers like a dark cloud, and he can't shake the feeling that they've crossed a line they can't uncross. The worst part, Jack could have hurt them. He had every opportunity to unleash the years of combat training he possessed, to turn the tables completely in his favor. But he didn't. The realization hangs heavy between them, a stark reminder that sometimes power lies not in aggression, but in restraint. Ripper sighs, the reality settling in like a heavy fog. "What now?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Axel straightens, forcing a semblance of bravado back into his posture. "We regroup. We don't let this slide," he asserts, but even he can hear the wavering confidence in his own words. "Regroup." Ripper shoots back incredulously. "What are we going to do? Challenge him to another fight?" "He's not some random punk, Axel. He's a SEAL. That's a whole different level." For a moment, Axel is silent, the gravity of their situation crashing down on him like a tidal wave. He clenches his fists, frustration boiling beneath the surface. "I'm not afraid of him," he finally says, though the conviction in his voice is wavering. Ripper meets his gaze, concern etched across his face. "You should be. Maybe we should think twice before messing with someone like that again." The flickering streetlight casts eerie shadows across their faces, and the silence settles back in, more suffocating than before. Both men are trapped in their own thoughts, the weight of their defeat heavy in the air. The highway stretches out before them, a dark and endless path, but tonight, the road feels more uncertain than ever. As they sit in their silence, both Axel and Ripper can't shake the feeling that they've awakened something they can't easily put back to sleep. The night is far from over, and as they rev their engines and pull back onto the highway, they know they'll have to confront the consequences of their actions, both against Jack and against themselves. "Jack." And that was a humiliation neither of them would forget. Axel spits onto the pavement, but there's no anger in it. No smug grin. Just maybe, they'll think twice before picking a fight again. The neon glow of a roadside bar flickers in the dark, casting long shadows across the lot. Inside, the place is alive with the usual crowd, truckers, bikers, and locals looking for a drink after a long day. At a corner booth, nursing their beers. They aren't as loud as they used to be, just two men, lost in thought, the bruises on their pride taking longer to heal than the ones on their bodies. The memory of still lingers. The old man with the calm eyes. The speed, the precision, the sheer control he had over them. It wasn't just a fight. The bar's door swings open. A man walks in. His gait is steady, his shoulders squared. Maybe ex-military, maybe just another trucker with stories no one would ever hear. A few weeks ago. No, not out of fear. Because some lessons don't just teach you how to fight.